crisis. So, and it was, to be honest, I thought it was something. It was like a new age of auto design, sort of like the Model T. It was a time when there weren't any electric cars produced commercially, and people were building them themselves. So it kind of fit my background in that way.
Right. And what time, and I don't want to sound like a historian in this question, but like, we talk about alternative energy now. It's a big thing in our lives now. Mm-hmm. But when was, because it's progressively gotten more and more interesting to people, and more like, oh, maybe we should have thought of this sooner. So when did you think, well, maybe, electric as a form of energy for racing would be kind of the better way, as opposed to like alternative fuels or anything that was kind of popular at the time? You know what I mean?
Right. So the 70s we had the oil crisis, which you don't have to get into details on that, but the point is that there were long lines to get gasoline, so it was like, gee, I have all the electricity I want, but I can't drive my car. So you say, okay, what? And people were doing it in the 80s. They were starting to build these electric cars with big old lead acid batteries and stuff. And what I did when I started in Phoenix here, they had the electric 500 that was based right out of Phoenix, and I went to a race. They had a race here.
Was it at like Phoenix International?
Yeah, it was at Phoenix International, and it was '92. I went, and they had all kinds of sponsors there. They had the power companies. They had Goodyear. They had General Electric. There was sponsorships, and what happened was I went to it. I thought it was cool as heck. So I went to the GE booth, and there was an engineer there. And I said, "I'm an engineer, and how do I get a sponsorship?" And she said, "Well, just give me your name, and I'll call you." And it's like, I said, "Okay, we'll see how." And so basically, at that time, all you had to do was convince them that you were capable of building a car. And I had some pictures of stuff I'd done or something, and I emailed those to her, and sure enough, 8 months later, I get a motor and a controller in the mail,
So it was a lot easier just to ask for sponsorship back then than it is now, because of how popular racing is in general.
Right.
I think with motorsports. So what appealed to you about that type of racing, as opposed to, you got Indy, you got Formula One, you got, of course, NASCAR's still considered one of the most spectated sports. How you watch left circles all the time, I don't get it, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So in terms of going this route and finding a hobby and something like, this is not going to be great for the listeners out there, but I'm seeing pictures you're showing me of, off-roading, but also like the racetrack. So the ability for versatility, is that more appealing to like someone with an engineering mind to be like, okay, it's not just for one terrain or one track, right?
Right. Well, to be honest with you, it was a poor man's way to get into. It was the beginning of all of this racing with electric cars. In racing, we would have heat races that were high speed, but these were endurance races. So we'd have a heat race to figure out who's first in line and stuff. But they were endurance races, actually, the main race. But I don't know if I'm answering your question, but...
No, I guess I was an open-ended question. I probably
didn't
set it up right. But my point is, we have all these different types of motorsports now, and the popularity, obviously, people are really passionate about one or the other. Mm-hmm. And so, and you see like NASCAR a NASCAR is not really, it's built for the track, and that's it.
And what you're saying basically is why this was appealing, and that is that those types of racing, NASCAR and Indy and stuff, you had to have millions of dollars. A car costs $1 million. Okay, a tranny will cost you $50,000.
Oh, okay.
An engine will cost you $150,000. I don't know what it is today, but you had to have big money. So this was a whole race mode that was brand new, and anybody could get in it. So it was a poor man's chance.
It was more feasible for the average man, more than somebody that was inherited money or had money or whatever.
Yeah, I was competing against $1 million car, and I think the first car cost me about $7,000.
Nice.
And I was racing against a $1 million APS car. Okay, there was no way I was going to beat that car. Okay, there was no way. But I was in the race with it, and I came in second. You know, I had a good purse in one of them. And so I was actually in the thick of it, and I didn't have to have all this money. And I didn't. The only sponsor I had, Goodyear sponsored tires, GE sponsored the motor. I got some electronic components from International Rectifier and Rotron, and it's on the website. I have a website, DM3 Electrics, and it kind of breaks it all down if somebody wants to go in there. But the bottom line is I was able to do something that I was on par in a I don't want to say on par with all these rich entrants, but I was able to do it. And
so it was more ingenuity than somebody's wallet.
Exactly. And I was the car builder. I had help from my brother and some a pit crew member, some double E's that helped me. I had a good friend who was a double E and helped me a lot, basically, on how I could help things efficiency wise. And so I was basically a one man show. I built the car. I drove it. I paid for everything, and small time operation. There were universities that participated from all over the country. There were universities from overseas. There were all the local high schools were participating. There was about anywhere from a half a dozen to a dozen independents like myself, and it varied every year how many were in it. And so, if you looked at it, I mean, we had more. I'll never forget, like about 95 or so, I had, someone showed me a Japanese magazine that had my car in it. And it was a story, of course I couldn't read it, but, it was a story about my car, and it showed my truck and stuff. But there was a lot of press coverage around the world at the time.
Right. And so, do they have like names, like you mentioned, like a something 500 or 300, you know how they mention based on mileage or lap time, where they're probably documented online that people can look up? Do you?
I guess I'm not following you exactly.
So what I'm asking is, like, do you have a couple names of these races that you participated in?
Oh, well, it was the Electric 5. It was called the Electric 500.
Was it a series or just one race?
It was one annual race. It was in March of every year. So, for instance, I got that motor, when I tell you the first one, the first motor, I got it in November. And I had to have the car ready in March. So I wasn't going to build the car unless I really knew I got the sponsorship. So I had to do it in like 4 months, which you see these reality shows where they have to build a car in a certain.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, but anyway, it was the APS Electrics. Is what it was. It was Electric 500, and it was, and they had some of the toward the end of that, and it lasted from 91. I think it started in 91, and the last year was 90. I think it was 98.
Why was there like it was an era? Why do you think it stopped?
Oh, so I was real close to the organizers of it because I was one of the few independent guys. I wasn't a university or anything. I was just Joe Blow from Phoenix. But anyway, he called me one day and he said, "It's all gone. We're not going to do it." I did it for 7 years, and all of a sudden one day he called and I said, "It can't be." He said, "All the sponsors are pulling out, and nobody knew why." All of a sudden he gets phone calls, and all the sponsors, which was SMUD and APS, Goodyear, GE, SRP, PG&E, and they all pulled their sponsorship.